G'day, hello, and welcome back to Reality Check. I'm your host, Ross Coulthart, here for News Nation on the UAP beat, telling you all the stories they don't want you to know about the vexing mystery of unidentified anomalous phenomena. How much does the Pentagon really know? How much does the intelligence community really know? And is Congress being told the truth? Well, clearly, this week it's come out that Congress doesn't think it's being told the truth. Representative Eric Burleson and 7 other congressional representatives have courageously put their name to a very strong letter that's gone to Speaker Johnson requesting the establishment of a UAP Select Committee to be set up as a subcommittee within the House Oversight and Accountability Committee. The letter that went to Speaker Johnson on the 12th of March is, I think, historic because of what it sets out and what it underlines about what congressional representatives clearly think is lies, deceit, and distrust oozing from the Pentagon and the intelligence community. They're not buying it. They're not buying the cover-up because, as we know, last Friday week there was a decision made by the Pentagon to release a report which was an outrageous deceit on the American public and indeed on the planet. The Pentagon has formally denied any knowledge of extraterrestrial life or technology engaging with this planet. They've formally denied any retrieval of non-human technology, and they've formally denied any reverse engineering program. It's all very cautious language, and you could drive a truck through the holes that exist in how they've phrased their responses. None of the people that gave evidence to Arrow were put under oath, so they don't face any comeback at all if they're subsequently shown to be liars. Congress could, of course, haul them before the Congress and tickle their feet for basically misleading Congress, but it wouldn't be the first time that the Defense Department and the intelligence community has misled or flat out lied to the Congress. But this time, Congress isn't letting go. They're demanding a committee which would basically provide an opportunity for the committee to investigate and assess how transparent and accountable the federal government is when it comes to UAP. And the representatives that have put their name to this document, it's bipartisan. You've got on the Dem side, Jared Moskowitz from Florida, as well as Eric Burleson. You've got Tim Burchett from Tennessee, Anna Paulina Luna, Republican from Florida, Andy Ogles, Republican also from Tennessee, Nancy Mace, Republican from South Carolina, Troy Nehls, Republican from Texas, and Matt Gaetz, Republican from Florida. It does worry me a little bit that this proposed UAP caucus that's set up last fall, at least publicly, is more overtly Republican than Democrat. But I am told that behind the scenes there are a lot of Democrat reps who've taken a very strong interest in this UAP issue. There have been secret meetings, secret briefings, and of course in a number of committees, the House Oversight Committee, the House Armed Services Committee, the House Permanent Select Committee for Intelligence, the Senate Armed Services Committee, and the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence, you've got an extraordinary number of witnesses that have come forward in the last 2 years to give evidence of what they know about a legacy retrieval and reverse engineering program. And crucially, it's very, very important for people to understand most of these witnesses never went near Arrow. They wouldn't go touching the Defense Department's UFO investigation office with a stinky barge pole. They didn't trust them. Neither did David Grush. David Grush's evidence is locked up in-camera evidence that was provided in a skiff heard by the most highly cleared staffers in the Congress. And it's David Grush particularly who's given evidence of locations, facilities, the people who are running this program, the people who are responsible for the retrievals, the organisations, the names. He's given full chapter and verse detail. Then, As well as that, you've got other witnesses who've come forward in the past 2 years who've also given direct first-hand evidence. And this shows the lie to the claims made by the UAP investigation office in the Pentagon, the ARROW, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, led at the time by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. It shows the lie to the claims made by that organisation in the historical review released earlier this month, which basically asserts that there's no evidence of a retrieval or reverse engineering program involving NHI, a non-human intelligence. Or actually what they said was ET, extraterrestrial. And I think that's very important, because they did exclude, by answering in terms of ET, extraterrestrial, they're talking about off-planet entities. What if there's a life form that's always been on this planet? What if it's ultra-terrestrial? What if it's somehow here, but interdimensional, or somewhere else on this planet that we don't quite comprehend the location of? There are a number of explanations that I've heard in dark rooms, in whispered chats, and I think it's time for the Congress to start taking these allegations seriously. And Representative Burleson and 7 other congressional representatives agree with me, and they are taking it seriously. And the great thing about it is that inside the Congress, there's a broad bipartisan support now, a push for questions to be asked and for answers to be given. And to that extent, what Representative Burleson has said is that he thinks the government is providing very little clarity on the origins and what it knows about these UAPs. He also says, and this is a great quote, "A major barrier has been a lack of cooperation and evasion of congressional scrutiny from the DoD and the IC, the Defence Department and the intelligence community, which has only deepened public mistrust." And he's emphasised it's unclear just how much public funds are being spent analysing and investigating UAPs. Well, sir, and all of your colleagues, I can tell you, if you dig, you will find. There are people who are willing to speak to your committee. They just need the protections that whistleblowers need to feel comfortable about coming forward, and in particular about speaking publicly. So what this committee needs, and this is going to be a real test for Speaker Johnson, and indeed for the Defence Department and the intelligence community. Let's preface everything I say here with the fact that the crucial point to make all the way through here is, if they've got nothing to hide, then they can be completely open. If the Pentagon's being completely truthful with the Congress that it has no evidence of NHI, no evidence of ET, no evidence of exotic recovered non-human technology, prove it. Open the books. Disclose. I think there's going to be some very interesting evidence that comes out in the run. The reason this matters is because if this is true, and I've said this, I feel like a scratchy record, this is the biggest secret in human history. It's not just an American national security secret. It's a secret for humanity. If it's true that the United States is aware of the existence of a non-human intelligence engaging with this planet, if it's true that the United States, as David Grush and numerous other witnesses have told me, are alleging, there is a reverse engineering program involving non-human technology. If that's all true, it's just like nothing else matters. It's big, it's huge, it's gigantic, and it should be revealed. And I think what the committee needs to do is make sure that it does respect national security. There are a lot of good people in ARROW, in the Pentagon UFO office, who are frustrated with the former leadership of Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. They're actually pissed with the fact that he has misrepresented what many of them, think. And they're anxious to see this story properly told. So are people in the defence and intelligence community. They're just looking for an opportunity. And look, I sense a huge frustration from the comments that I've received from our viewership that there's a view, oh look, just bring it all out. You know, these people should just come out and tell all, and the Pentagon and the intelligence community wouldn't dare attack them. Well, believe me, they would. they're very vengeful, they're very vindictive. And for a lot of these people working in defence and intelligence, the one thing that they have that is vital for their continuing employment is their security oath protection, their clearances, their top secret SCI compartmentalised clearances, and particularly the programs that they've been read into, which I understand operate as waived, unacknowledged special access programs. The reason why there's been a breakdown in accountability and the reason why this committee is so important is that, yes, there are special access programs that regulate the secrets relating to this legacy retrieval and reverse engineering program, but they've been hidden in a way that has actually deliberately falsified evidence and misled Congress. Even members of the so-called Gang of Eight, the ultimate oversight body of these secrets in the Congress, have not been read into this. I know that for a fact. This is why it matters. We now have an incredibly important moment in American history. It's a tipping point. It's an inflection point where the Congress is finally getting the opportunity or seeking the opportunity to do its job. The House Oversight Committee is the most powerful oversight, accountability, transparency committee in the House, in the lower house of Congress and the House of Reps. If it's given this job, if it's given this committee, and if it's given the clearances, and if it can ensure the protections for the whistleblowers who do want to come forward, what can happen is quite explosive, and it can happen very, very quickly. And what I find interesting is that there's something this committee knows, there's something these representatives know that they're not letting on about publicly. Representative Burleson talks about new evidence. He talks about how he's very aware that they're being lied to and misled by the Pentagon. What does he know that we publicly don't yet know? It's going to be very, very interesting to see what comes out of all of this. So, we don't yet know whether Burleson and his 7 colleagues have got the support of Speaker Johnson. So, if you care about this issue, America's a democracy, write a letter. Write a letter to your congressional representative, to your senator, and let them know this matters. Now, there's a terrific interview that my colleague Blake Berman did earlier this week with Representative Eric Burleson. Have a listen.
Joining us now is the congressman from Missouri, Congressman Burleson. Thanks for being with us here on the Hill. What do you want here?
Great to be here.
Is this a new committee? And how receptive is the House Speaker Mike Johnson to this?
Yeah, we've reached out to Mike Johnson. I think that this is the next step, is to send a formal letter. Look, I'm lucky to have other colleagues that are part of the UAP caucus that we're all taking this matter very seriously. We took the whistleblower, David Grush, and his allegations very seriously. I think we took the testimony of pilots who have had these near-miss encounters and have seen these objects. We've taken their concerns very seriously, and I think that we owe it to the American people to shed light on the expenditures that are, all the money that's being used to investigate these matters. This needs to be done in a transparent way, and we're trying to do this in a very thoughtful way, which is why I think that we need the resources. We need to have a select committee so that we can have the staff in place who are dedicated to this cause.
Is the Speaker on your side?
I don't know yet. I have a feeling I'll look forward to hearing from him, but okay. I know that we've got Chairman Comer on our side. We've got Tim Burchett and other members of the UAP caucus. And
Democrats
so hopefully
and Republicans.
We'll get a response from the Speaker.
Yep.
Yes.
Here was the report, Congressman.
Representative Moskowitz.
Yep, exactly. Here was the report from the Pentagon last week, basically pushing back on David Grush's testimony and the idea that there's a secret crash retrieval program. Quote, Arrow, which is the government agency overseeing this, assesses that all of the named and described alleged hidden UAP reverse engineering programs provided by interviewees either do not exist, are misidentified authentic national security programs that are not related to extraterrestrial technology exploitation, or resolve to a de-established program. Do you trust, Congressman, the Pentagon on this when that is their finding? or do you think there is more there to look into?
I don't, because they weren't transparent to us in a SCIF setting, so they could have brought forward evidence. They could have explained what these special access programs actually do, but they are not willing to do that with Congress. So to me, it's time that they open the kimono, that they show us exactly what's happening, because they should, if they're doing something that's good for the American people, if they're being responsible with taxpayer dollars, they should have nothing to hide.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it there. And Congressman, thanks for joining us. Come back when if you get this committee formed and let us know what exactly you're tracking down. Congressman Eric Burlison from Missouri. Thank you, sir.
Anytime.
G'day, Joe. Thanks for speaking to me. I'm very interested to know this UAP Select Committee idea. It's been mooted before and it was knocked back by Speaker McCarthy last year. What do you think is the chance of this succeeding this time?
Well, it is a little bit different now. You've got a different Speaker of the House in Mike Johnson. And if you talk to folks who were on the caucus, the informal UAP caucus, what they will tell you is they feel like there's a bit more of a chance to move this thing forward with a Johnson speakership than the previous leadership. Now, obviously, it's going to be up to the leadership, Hakeem Jeffries on the Democratic side and Johnson, to officially approve what they want to do, because remember, they're asking for a select committee, not just a caucus, not an informal group. This would be a newly established committee within the House of Representatives exclusively dealing with this issue. So it would need to go through leadership. And again, if you talk to members who are passionate about this issue, they feel like there's at least a bit more of a chance. And of course, just the news moving further and further along, they believe gives them a little bit more momentum this time around. They're more hopeful now than they were maybe 6 months ago when we were asking them the question about whether they may be able to actually form a committee like this.
So, Joe, the thing that strikes me most of all is it's utterly absurd. You've got the Pentagon denying extraterrestrial contact of any kind, knowledge of any kind of retrieved non-human technology, and yet in the Congress, even from the public statements, it's quite clear that congressional representatives are of the view that they're not being told the full story by the Pentagon or by the intelligence community. Is that your sense?
So that is my sense. If you talk to people, especially on the House side of the Capitol, who are interested in the topic, who want to continue to learn more, their biggest frustration is they're hearing certain things from people who can't go public, and they think they are not getting the information that they need from the Pentagon, from the DOD specifically. And we know that this report recently, this Arrow report came out, but they're simply feeling like they need more resources, they need more access. And actually, that's at the heart of their request to establish this committee, because they feel like if they are a legitimate committee here of jurisdiction over this issue, they would have more authority to get access to some of the information that they're at least seeking, that they feel like they're still, after months and months, being stonewalled from getting. So that's really the heart of their frustration there, is that access and the real information. Many of them feel like it's not just that they're not getting it. In some cases, lawmakers feel like they're being misled. And we've heard that from, not just one or two members, but from a larger group of them.
So, Joe, one of the things that worries me a little bit about this proposed UAP Select Committee is it ain't worth jot unless those members get the security clearances that allow them to ask the questions that go into Title 50 security issues. And this was one of the big hindrances in the past for the committee, that they couldn't get the security clearances that would allow them to even question people, even inside a SCIF, a secure room, about things like WUSAPs, waived, unacknowledged special access programs. Do you know, are they trying to get the security clearance that they'll need to be able to be effective as a committee, and are they likely to get it?
It's a good question that I don't think they even know the answer to, whether they, even if they establish a committee, will have different levels of clearance. But I can tell you that it's not something that they're speculating about or guessing as to whether they don't have the proper clearance. They are being told as much. When they go into these, classified briefings, there were two, one from the intelligence community, one from the Defense Department, who gave these classified briefings to a handful of House members. And many of these members came out of those briefings, at least the first one from the DOD, frustrated because they said they were told they didn't have the proper clearance to hear the answers to the questions that they were asking, which obviously is going to be frustrating. If you're a lawmaker, right, who's trying to get information and you think, I'm a sitting member of Congress, I've got the pin, I've got the badge, I should be able to get access to this information. So that's a big point of contention. And again, part of the reason why they feel like if they can at least establish a new committee, maybe that gives them a better hand if it comes to trying to get that clearance to either get it themselves or to be able to be approved to hear in a classified setting things from people with the proper clearance to even answer those questions. So it is a conundrum for them that we've heard a lot of frustration about, Ross.
So there are 7 members who've spoken in this letter to Speaker Johnson, identifying themselves effectively as members of what's loosely called the UAP caucus. And as I understand it, This was a coalition of representatives that was created back last fall. Who are they and what's this all about, the UAP caucus?
So I would put this into 2 categories among members of Congress when it comes to interest in the UAP issue. You've got like tier 1 members, and they would be people like Tim Burchett, people like Jared Moskowitz, who's a Democrat, and others, Congressman Burleson, who are really interested in pushing forward aggressively, trying to get more access, more information, trying to form this committee themselves. And then you've got what I would call a tier 2, which are members of Congress who are certainly interested in the topic, who may not be on the front lines and actually doing the work of trying to get this, but are at least open and at least, curious about the topic enough to be asking questions. Now, it was clear sort of who those 2 groups were back in that unprecedented hearing that we had in July, where you had David Grush, where you had others who were testifying under oath, talking about things we've never heard before Congress, right? And you could hear people like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a Democrat, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, a Republican, asking serious questions, digging in, who, again, I may put in that category 2. Now, those are people who maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it would almost be unheard of that you'd have members of Congress at that level asking these kinds of questions and not just dismissing outright claims about UAPs or a reverse engineering program as totally ridiculous. So it shows you just how far the ball has moved forward in this building in the Capitol, that you've got members of Congress in the Senate and in the House who are taken very seriously, all the way up to Senator Chuck Schumer, who has put forward an amendment in the NDAA asking essentially for much more openness, much more clarification about non-human intelligence. And that's the language he's been writing. It just shows you how far these members have come. So there's a big spectrum, Ross, of interest when it comes to certain members of Congress. Those 7 who put their names on this petition, essentially, to the Speaker of the House, I would put at the very highest level when it comes to those really pushing forward on the issue.
Missouri Congressman Representative Eric Burleson has said in interview, I think it was with Blake Berman, that he believes he has the support of Chairman Comer, James Comer, from the Oversight Committee. Do you agree with him? Is Comer outspoken on this? Is he prepared to stick his neck out and say that he'll support a UAP Select Committee?
He's not outspoken on this, but Congressman Burleson told me the same thing. And if we can toot our own horn here, News Nation broke this story. We had been talking to many members of that group, including Congressman Burleson. I'm not sure that Comer is outspoken in the sense that he's not really out front. And if you ask him questions about this topic, he usually defers to people like Burleson, like Tim Burchett. But I will say the hearing that we had here on Capitol Hill that was unprecedented was in the Oversight Committee, which Chairman Comer is at the top of, and it wouldn't have happened without his okay. So he is certainly not a hindrance in any way. I don't know that he is, the one that is moving the momentum, but I don't think he's getting in the way of it either. And I think in that sense, he is going to be an important figure because he's going to be one of the gatekeepers for the efforts on this topic moving forward.
So, Joe, give me your crystal ball. I mean, the thing that worries me a little bit about this caucus is these aren't high-powered members. These aren't very senior members of the House, but they clearly do have connections to people like Schumer and Comer. What do you think? Do you think that the numbers are more against such an idea, a UAP select committee in the House, or do you think there's a really good chance this time that this one might get up?
Yeah. So I am not in the prediction game because I'm often wrong. But if I'm going to take a shot at it, what I would tell you is I think it's certainly possible, and I think that there are real, genuine interests in doing this. But I think the biggest challenge isn't so much an establishment pushing back on the committee. I think it's just that most members of Congress don't have this topic as their number one or two or three priorities. And if you're the Speaker of the House, he just said, yesterday or the day before, he's getting 3 hours of sleep. He's got a million things he's dealing with. So you've got, the government funding issue that continues to come up. You've got a war that's going on in Ukraine and a war in Gaza. You've got TikTok issues right now. You've got trade issues that they're dealing with. So while certainly there are some members, those 7 you've identified here, who put their names on this list, who, for them, maybe this UAP issue is really at the top of their list. But when it comes to the Republican leadership in the House and even the Democratic leadership in the House in an election year, mind you, and you've got all kinds of things like immigration and border funding as well. There are just a lot of other things that are going to get in the way that their offices are getting phone calls about, more so than this issue. And so I think the biggest hindrance to establishing a committee like this may not be, the DOD pushing back or something like that. It may simply be bandwidth for a lot of members. So just to be frank with you, that I think is going to be a huge challenge in getting this done, is just getting the Speaker's attention in time to be able to establish this, because it's not an easy step, and it's not like anyone just throws out a committee and they establish it. It takes a lot of time, a lot of eyeballs, a lot of approval. So, it's possible, but it's going to be a challenge.
Joe, what does it mean to have a UAP select committee as distinct from it just being talked about in one of the normal subcommittees of the House Oversight Committee? What can a select committee do on UAPs that it can't do currently?
So what it would do, and imagine if you had one now, you would have a chairperson of that committee, the top-ranking Republican. You'd have a ranking member, the top Democrat, on that committee. They would potentially have the power themselves to issue subpoenas to the Department of Defense, to private companies. And the House of Representatives has that power now. But what they lack is the will, because of all the other reasons that I've talked about. This is not an issue when you look at the laundry list of things, from immigration to wars to all of the other things, that is really high priority. So a select committee would focus exclusively on this. It would have its own staff. It would have its own potentially lawyers, investigators, people who would work on this issue alone in a way that they don't do right now. And the subpoena power would be key, because imagine a subpoena in the hands of somebody like a Congressman Burleson or like Congresswoman Luna or something along those lines, right? There would be a lot more interest and I think a lot more action and activity. Right now, these members that we've identified who are, on the front lines of this fight, they have to go through the regular committee process to get those kinds of things done. And if they had their own jurisdiction and committee, they wouldn't have to do that. They'd be able to just move forward on things as they came up. So certainly, I think that would be something that would be a huge advantage to them, that they would really want to get done, that they don't have the power to do now.
So final question, Joe. In history, the most glaringly obvious example of a committee that really did hold the Defence Department and the intelligence community to account was, of course, the 1970s Church Committee, which did an incredibly intensive investigation into the CIA. It had public hearings where former director of CIA and former senior executives of CIA were called and put under oath and forced to reveal things that were often criminal and illegal that had been conducted in the name of national security. Is there the power in a UAP select committee to do that kind of thing?
I don't think so at the beginning, but I think if this were to be established, the key thing here in Capitol Hill that maybe people don't quite understand from home is momentum is everything, right? If there's momentum behind the work that is being done, let's say that there is a select committee that is established here, they may have to start small, but the more things that are revealed, the more on this topic that is, uncovered or acknowledged from the Pentagon, from Arrow, from others, that creates real momentum and that creates real credibility. And once that ball is rolling, then I think you would start to get maybe heavier hitters, bigger players, and then all of a sudden this becomes a much more upfront issue, not just in this building, but I think among the public. And I think that's why it was so important when, you may remember, I referenced earlier, the amendment to the NDAA that Chuck Schumer put his name on, that Senator Mike Rounds put his name on. These are people who are taken very seriously, who are very well respected, not just among their own parties, but the opposite parties as well. So I think it may start small, but it would take that momentum, and it may take some time. As you referenced with the Church Committee, it's not something that was done overnight, right? Things have to build, momentum has to build, and I think that would be the key there.
Joe Khalil, it's a pleasure to plunder your political brain, my friend. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and we look forward to talking to you here on Reality Check sometime soon in the future.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for having me, Ross.
Good on you, Joe. Thanks very much. So that's Joe Khalil's analysis of the likelihood of the UAP caucus in Congress being able to swing this UAP select committee. I think the real crunch decision is going to come when the Defence Department and the intelligence community, even if they do get this committee up, are they going to approve the security clearances for these members to be briefed, even inside a secure skiff, about just what it is that the Defence Department and the intelligence community really do know about UAPs? It's very interesting that, as Joe said, in the past, there's been blocks put on the House of Representatives members trying to get UAP questions asked, because frankly, if there is nothing to hide, if, as Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and the Pentagon have claimed, there is no secret extraterrestrial knowledge or NHI technology that's been recovered, if that really is the case, well, why on earth all the secrecy? And that's the conundrum here, is that clearly representatives think they're being lied to. They think they're being misled by the Pentagon and by the intelligence community. Tim Burchett very colourfully said in one interview that he did with News Nation, quote, "The Pentagon is lying. Since 1947, they told us these things don't exist, and yet they spend tens of millions of dollars on these things, on studying something, yet they won't release the reports. They're redacted. They look like somebody shot him with the 12-gauge shotgun." Tim Burchett's a colourful character, and I like the way he phrases himself. But I think the other thing that I think we need to give voice to are the comments from our viewers. And there's a few that are very, very interesting. There's a number of people. There's Tony Ascot 8620 who's commented on our YouTube, "I don't get it. There's technology that's only being given to a few that could possibly change our planet. Why is no one else screaming from the rooftops at this point?" Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Tony, because the reason that I'm often given by people inside the security establishment is that we can't reveal. It's not good for the US to reveal even the knowledge of an existence of NHI, because to do that is a slippery slope. If you reveal the existence of ET, NHI, you then have to reveal whether or not you've recovered biologics or technology. Now, frankly, I don't agree with that. I think we live in a country, all of us have lived in a system where, for example, we know that nuclear weapons exist, but we know that we shouldn't know how to make them. That's something that's quite rightly within the preserve of national security. It's a secret that shouldn't be shared. And if it's true that the United States has recovered technology of non-human origin, which I do think is true, then I can understand why there might be some resistance to revealing what that technology is. What I don't understand, and indeed what I know many representatives in the Congress question, and senators, is why we can't be told, if it is the case, that we are and have been in contact with a non-human intelligence. There's another viewer who's commented and asked, Brian Alley, 1531, asked, when Daniel Sheehan, the attorney, came across those photographs, did he not write down the details of the particular film roll? Were the frames showing the photographs devoid of any identifying information? His remarks suggest that he, in fact, did not note any of this information. Brian, I have to admit, when I first interviewed Daniel Sheehan about what he saw in the uncompleted archive building, the Madison building near Congress, I couldn't believe that what he told me is actually what happened. He says that as soon as he saw those images of what he says was an obvious recovered non-human craft, a flying saucer lying in a snowdrift, being looked at and filmed by US soldiers dressed in US Air Force uniforms from around about the 1940s, he says he completely freaked. He panicked. And as a result of the panic, even though he had many hours left during the day, there were 2 G-men sitting outside who were supervising his access to the material, but they weren't in the room. I think he was so genuinely shocked. Maybe it was Danny Sheehan's ontological shock. He just couldn't bring himself to do what you and I probably would have wanted to have done, which is sit there and go through all that material for as long as possible. I mean, the thing that frustrates me, and he admits he screwed up on this, the thing that frustrates me is if I'd had the opportunity to go through the archives, the classified archives from Project Blue Book that revealed what the Pentagon truly did know about UAPs. This is the one opportunity ever in history that I know of where an individual from outside the legacy program has been allowed access. And Daniel Sheehan was done this through the auspices of the Congressional Research Service on behalf of President Jimmy Carter. So there was a presidential fiat here. There was a presidential order that the CIA endeavour to provide that information. And so I guess they had to follow through. So yes, it is frustrating. I agree with you. It is very, very frustrating that we can't we can't get more information. But what we do know, if you believe Daniel Sheehan, and I do, what we do know is that there are these files and they're being improperly withheld. And it really does raise a question. It's why Daniel Sheehan called out Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Because frankly, if those files exist, as I believe they do, or at least they existed in 1977, what on earth is Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick talking about with his historical review of the UAP question? It's clear there is a whole archive that he has not been given access to. And was that because ARRO didn't have the Title 50 access that allowed it to have access to this program? And is it because without that Title 50 access, the people in charge of that program, however immorally, decided to take it upon themselves to lie to even the Pentagon's chief official in charge of investigating UAPs? These are questions that we're going to keep on digging into on Reality Check because you, the public, want to know more, and so do I. And we're not going to let go. Thanks so much for talking and getting back to me on the YouTube channel. We love your tips. We love your comments. And we're here to keep on digging. Thank you again. See you next time on Reality Check.